Please give a warm welcome to first-time speaker Kim Schlesinger.
Thank you. Got this one on. All right, good morning. My name is Kim Schlesinger, and I'm an SRE at a company called DevOps. And today I'm going to tell you that your company can transform a junior engineer to a mid-level engineer within 1 year. And I'm going to spend the rest of my talk telling you how. A little bit about me and why I'm interested in this particular topic. First and foremost, I'm an educator. I have a bachelor's degree in music education, a master's degree in special education, and I taught for 6 years after I graduated college. I also worked for an organization called Teach for America, which does alternative teacher training. And when I worked for them, I did curriculum design and teacher training, and I learned a lot about how children and adults learn. I also learned a lot about how to create spaces where people can have outstanding learning opportunities. So the educator part of me is really interested in this topic. The other reason I'm so interested in this topic is that I'm an SRE at DevOps. I've been with the company for 10 months, and I've been going through this journey myself. So it's been really interesting to apply what I know as an educator to my own experience learning and becoming a site reliability engineer. So I want to tell you about my journey into site reliability engineering. But there's also a business imperative for all of us who work at companies, and I was really inspired by this tweet by Steve Kinney, who's a principal engineer at Twilio SendGrid. He said, "Being able to take junior engineers and turn them into badasses is a competitive advantage." We all know how challenging it can be to find and hire senior engineers. They're also very, very costly. So if you can transform your organization into one that can bring in new folks and train them up into mids and seniors, you're going to have an outstanding company. So this is Zero to SRE. This talk is for organizational leaders who shape the culture at your company, like CTOs, VPs of engineering, and team leaders. Also, as I go throughout the talk, you can replace SRE with DevOps engineer, developer, or whatever you call technologists at your company. What we're going to cover today are 3 things. First, what should be true about your company culture before you even consider hiring junior engineers. 2, how to prepare for your junior engineers day 1. And 3, how to provide them with personalized resources and ongoing support so that they can grow into your mid and senior level engineers. And I like to think about this, this process is you have to put a ton of work into getting ready for a junior engineer before you even consider hiring them. And it's a lot like opening a restaurant. When you want to open a restaurant, you can't just start cooking food and serving it to customers right away. You have to find a building and outfit it with the right equipment. Then you have to hire chefs and sous chefs who can prepare your food. And then you've got to get servers who can take the food out to your customers who then start to eat and enjoy and digest. And it's the same thing when you're hiring junior engineers. You've got to set up your company culture first. You've got to get the people who work at your company on board, and then you can start hiring and training those junior engineers. So let's talk about what should be true about your company before you hire junior engineers, or how do you build your restaurant. I'm going to be talking a lot about my experiences at DevOps and telling you stories about how this has looked for me and my colleagues. First thing that should be true about your company before you hire junior engineers is you should guarantee 20% time for learning. Your new engineers are going to be engaged in a lot of learning when they start. Almost everything might be new, especially if they've just graduated from a boot camp or gotten their degree in computer science. You want to bring them into an engineering team where learning new skills is valued and time is set aside for this learning during the workday. The junior engineers should not be the odd one out learning new things on the job. A lot of companies aspire to have 20% time, but it's merely aspirational, it's not real. And the way that you make it real is you roll it into capacity planning. So capacity planning is how you and your team plan for how you're going to break up work among your teams and employees. And the way that DevOps has made this true is that every week our team leads get together and they look at the work that we've done over the last week, what we've done with clients, what we've done internally, and they make sure that they add time in for 8 hours a week for people to engage in learning time. We call it DevOps time. So team leads, our VP of engineering are very clued into this. They talk about it every week, they measure it, they analyze it, they make sure that it's true. And this is sort of what it looks like when it flows down to someone like me who's an individual contributor. So I work on a team with 3 other engineers, and once a week we have a planning meeting where we talk about what work needs to get done. We use Trello as our project management system, and you can see that I'm tracking what I'm going to do for my learning time that week. So I was going to read chapter 5 of How Linux Works this week. I estimated it would take me 2 points of work. It's got the label RO time, which is what we call our learning time. And this gets rolled into my normal workflow. So I don't feel weird about taking the learning time. In fact, it's expected that I'm doing that each and every week. At our weekly planning meeting, my team, we talk about what we've done with clients, but we also discuss, did you do reactive ops time? What did you do? How was it? And if you weren't able to get that time in during the last week, how can we make sure that it's true for this week? So discuss and share that learning time, roll it into your capacity planning, and make that learning time something that you and your company are measuring, because you can't measure or you can't manage what you don't measure. So 20% time guaranteed for your engineers. The second thing that you want to be true of your engineering organization before you bring on junior engineers is you want to create a culture of error. A culture of error is when making mistakes and learning from them is a valued part of your team. You expect error and praise risk-taking. This idea is from a book called Teach Like a Champion by Doug Lemov. He's an expert in teaching techniques. And in a culture of error, making mistakes is praised, and they're dissected as a way of learning something new. This culture of error sometimes is called by different names. One way is psychological safety. And DevOps culture, site reliability engineering, has a lot of this built into the discipline. Something like blameless postmortems is a great way of having a culture of error. When you examine something that's gone wrong, and instead of pointing fingers and making someone feel ashamed that they did something wrong, you examine the problem, learn from it, and move forward. Engineers should be willing to feel vulnerable by admitting when they don't know something and asking for help. And your junior engineers should see this in action from day one so that they don't feel stupid when they have to ask questions. So here's how this looks at Reactive Ops. We're a fully distributed company, no central office. We all work from home or a co-working space. And we communicate primarily via Zoom calls and Slack channels. We are strongly encouraged when we have technical questions to ask them in a Slack channel that's very public, so either our small team channel or the engineering channel. What this does is it makes people's questions visible, and it's really nice because as a junior SRE, I can see the types of questions that my more senior colleagues are asking. And I realize that we're all learning, we all forget things, and we get to use those questions as opportunities to learn something new or to learn something more deeply. So at Reactive Ops, asking questions in the open and watching them be answered in Slack is one way we cultivate that culture of error. Finally, before you consider bringing in a junior engineer to your team, you should make engineering teams and not individual engineers critical to your bottom line. And so back to Reactive Ops. About 2 years ago, the company was structured very differently than it is now. At that time, it was basically a staff augmentation firm. So a company would come to Reactive Ops and say, we need help with DevOps. The company would say, great, here's one engineer that's going to work with you at your company for 3, 6, 9 months, or a year. In this model, you need very senior, highly skilled engineers, and someone like me who is brand new cannot be hired in this model. So over the last 2 years, the company has done an incredible job of transitioning from that one-on-one staff augmentation model to a team structure where teams work with multiple clients all at once. And it's really, really wonderful as a junior engineer. And there are a couple reasons why. Nobody is siloed in their knowledge. We all work on all clients, and so we have to share a lot of context. It forces a lot of communication. This team structure is beneficial for a lot of reasons. I'll give you 3. 1, our team can survive when people go on vacation. One employee doesn't have all of the context for one client, and so someone can go on vacation and the team can absorb that person's loss. 2, your company or your team can handle it when people leave the company. It's inevitable and it's going to happen, and you want to make sure that other people know what's going on with your client or with your project, so when somebody leaves that they can pick up the slack. 3, when you're constantly sharing that context, it's easy to bring in a junior engineer and be explaining things to them, providing that context over and over because it's already part of your team culture. So, talking about building our restaurant, setting up the infrastructure for bringing in junior engineers, you want these 3 things to be true. First, guarantee 20% time for learning for your engineers. 2, create a culture of error. And 3, leverage teams, not individuals. All right, so you've got that infrastructure built. Now it's time for you to start preparing those recipes and serving up that information to your junior engineer. So we're gonna get really specific and talk about what needs to be true on the junior engineer's first day, their first week, their first month, their first 90 days, and their first year. So you've had a lot of work to do before you start hiring junior engineers. Once you hire them, you also have a lot of work to do before their first day. So let's talk about the work there. First thing, junior engineer comes on board, you welcome them, and then you want to provide them clear and measurable expectations about what's expected of them in their role. In my opinion, the way that the tech industry communicates this best is through engineering leveling docs. An engineering leveling doc has a description of the different roles on your team and describes the specific behaviors that are expected of people in these roles. I'm going to be providing an example of a really outstanding engineering leveling doc from a company called Truss. They're an infrastructure company based in San Francisco, and I like their leveling doc for a few reasons. First, it's public. It's a Google Doc that's open to anyone, so you can go and look at it. Second, the expectations they describe in their engineering leveling doc are both technical and more of the professional skills. So it's not just what you need to do technically, it's how you interact with your colleagues and clients. And third, the engineering leveling doc that Truss has built is not too long. Some organizations have docs that are pages and pages and pages long, and that feels really overwhelming to me. So Truss's doc is nice because it's pretty clean and pretty concise. So here's a view of one page of Truss's engineering leveling doc. They have in one column the title, the role that the person is in. They have the below expectations, the expectations, and what's happening when someone is above those expectations. But I want to zoom in on this column here, which is the role. So we're gonna look at the novice role and the advanced beginner role. And what Truss has done here is they just have a nice short statement about what that person does. So for their novice engineer, the engineering leveling doc says, is not yet ready to undertake work for a client, should pass through this level quickly. I really appreciate this specific summary because it's actually acknowledging, hey, it's your first day at our company. You're not gonna be able to do much, that's no problem. We want you to pass through this level very quickly. Then, when you're no longer a novice, you've moved up and you're an advanced beginner. And the description for that role is that you're able to work as a junior engineer on a client team with more or less help from a senior trussel on the team. This is a great description for a junior engineer. You're working on client work, you're working on a team, but you get a lot of help from somebody more senior. It's very realistic. These are nice summaries, and as the junior engineer, it's the story you can tell yourself about what's expected of you in your role. So we've talked about the summaries. Now let's go into the expectations, which describes the behaviors that are expected of each role. So this is from the novice role, and I love this particular expectation because it's measurable. So this expectation is that the novice engineer attempts to characterize and resolve roadblocks through 5 to 15 minutes of Google searching before reporting. So as a junior engineer's manager, this is wonderful because you can tell the person, hey, I want you to work on this problem. If you get stuck, no problem. I want you to spend at least 5 minutes on Google searching for a solution, but no more than 15 minutes before you ask me for help. We've all been in a situation where we're trying to figure something out and you can spend hours on Google, and this is just very clear. After 15 minutes, come and see me, that senior engineer. The time may be different for you and your company, but again, I love this because it's clear and it's measurable and it's something you can coach that junior engineer around. So that's from that novice category. Let's look at an expectation from the beginner. It's that the engineer breaks moderately sized tasks down into smaller units of work upon request and reviews a breakdown with senior engineers. I like this set of behaviors because, one, you're coaching the new engineer about how to decompose larger problems into a smaller to-do list. And second, part of that process is talking about it with a more senior engineer. So there's going to be a nice feedback loop about, yes, you did a really nice job decomposing this problem in this way, but maybe you forgot something here. And it encourages a lot of discussion. So this is another good example of clear and measurable behavioral expectations from a leveling doc. Leveling doc is so nice as a junior engineer because you know exactly what you need to do to be climbing up the ladder and how to be promoted. It's also outstanding for your mid and senior level engineers, and if your company can swing it, have different levels for people who want to go more into a management track or want to do more of a technical leadership track. It makes things just, again, a lot more clear, a lot more measurable, and people know exactly what they need to do. So, one thing you need to have ready for your junior engineer on the first day is the engineering leveling doc. It's a lot of work to put together at first, but once you've got it, you only need to make small tweaks throughout the year, and then you can give it to folks who you've just hired. Another thing that you should have for your junior engineer on their first day, though, is a technical learning plan. You want to prepare a technical learning plan that is aligned with the day-to-day work of your engineers. When you interview the person and you're ready to give them the offer, think about what they can and can't do during their interview and tweak your learning plan to reflect the reality of that person's skill set. One thing that was maybe my favorite part of starting to work at Reactive Ops is on my first day I got welcome to the company, got the onboarding spiel, and within the first hour I had a technical learning plan that was designed just for me, and it was based off of what I knew and could do during my technical interview. These are some of the topics that were on my technical learning plan. So I had been a web developer for a year before I started at Reactive Ops, so I needed to learn more advanced Git commands as well as start working with Linux. I was a JavaScript developer and I had never used YAML before, so a big part of my learning plan was learning that particular format. I learned how to set up virtual private clouds with AWS and GCP, and my technical learning plan also covered how to use Docker and Kubernetes. As you give the person, your junior engineer, their technical learning plan, you want to make sure that your junior engineer is completing large and small projects as part of their technical learning plan. So you don't want things to be just theoretical. You want that person to actually be building and doing something that's related to the work of your team. So for me, as I worked through my technical learning plan, one of the things that I did was I built a small web app with a test suite. And then I stood up an EC2 instance with AWS, and I started deploying that app manually to the EC2 instance. When I started learning about continuous integration and continuous deployment, then I started hooking up that app and those tests and saying, Circle CI, run these tests, and when the tests pass, then automatically deploy the application using Circle CI. This mirrors the work that we do at Reactive Ops, and so it was a nice, small thing that I could do that actually helped open the door and allow me to do things with my team. So that technical learning plan, again, was aligned with the work that we do at the company. So you've got your technical learning plan. You are asking your junior engineer to do things that you do at your company. And you also want to provide them with systems of support and accountability. So as you give the technical learning plan to your new hire, work with them to set deadlines. They don't have to be really hard, or they don't have to be punitive in any way, but you want to have goals for that person. You also want to set up a process that makes it easy for the new hire to ask for help, and better yet, set up recurring check-ins to discuss that person's progress on the learning plan. So give them the learning plan, be thoughtful about it, but also provide lots of support as they're working through the learning plan. If you are curious about the specifics of my learning plan, you can find what we call our apprentice learning plan at Reactive Ops. It's the GitHub. You can go to the Reactive Ops organization and search for apprentice learning plan. All right, still on the first day, you've given your new hire their engineering leveling doc, you've given them their technical learning plan, and now you want to make sure that you're integrating that person onto their team. So integrate them on day one. First, introduce your junior engineer onto the team that they're going to be working on, get them scheduled for meetings, and have some of their teammates show them the ropes, even if it's how to log into your benefits platform. One thing that you might be wanting to do when you hire a junior engineer is say, you know what, why don't you, junior engineer, you can stay over here and work on the learning plan, and when you're ready, we'll integrate you onto the team. You want to avoid that. You want them to be part of the team so they can get help from their teammates and really be part of your company. The next thing you want to do on day one is be explicit about your desired timeline for that junior's first independent contribution. I'm scheduled for some meetings, and the last thing of the day is I meet with the CEO of the company. His name is Kendall Miller. I believe he's here. And Kendall was great. He sat down with me and he said, you know, Kim, we're so excited to have you, and we've never hired anyone as junior as you before. And we know that you have never done any of this type of ops work. And so in light of all of that, I just want to let you know that we as a company are committed to having you on, and it's okay if it takes you up to 6 months before you have your first contribution to client work. The good news is I was able to contribute a lot sooner than that. But what Kendall was communicating to me in that moment was, we care about you, we care about your learning, and it's okay if it takes a little bit of time. So no matter what your timeline is, when you hire that junior engineer, just be explicit about when you want them to issue their first pull request or do whatever it is you do at your company. All right, so that first day, again, a lot of work, but now we're getting into the part where most of the work is going to be on the junior engineer. So let's talk about the first week with your junior SRE. You want to have that person doing pairing and real work. The learning plan is incredibly important, but applying that knowledge is most important. So get the junior engineer working with their teammates as soon as possible. Second thing you want to do is prioritize developing muscle memory over grokking high-level concepts or first principles. One thing I've noticed about the tech industry is there's a lot of emphasis placed on first principles and concepts, which I think are incredibly important. But the way that humans learn is when we take something concrete and then move it to abstract. We don't learn abstract to concrete. So here's what this looks like in practice. Here's an example of something concrete. At Reactive Ops, we work with Kubernetes. And so have your junior engineer run these commands. First command, we're just saying, hey, I want you to get the services from this cluster in the namespace called kubesystem. Then I want you to get the pods from the namespace kubesystem. Then I want to get pods from the namespace kubesystem and make the output a little bit more verbose so I can see the IP address of the pods. This is something that anyone can do. They're typing, they're pressing enter, and they're seeing the output from their command line. Have your junior engineer do this a few times. Have them memorize this, feel really comfortable with it. Because then when you want to talk about the underlying concepts behind those things, it's going to be a lot easier for them to discuss it because they've actually done the work. So focus on concrete to abstract, developing that muscle memory. On your first week, you also want to roll your junior engineer into the normal flow of management one-on-ones. So make sure they have regular one-on-ones with their managers. That person's manager needs to be their #1 advocate, and the junior engineer should be meeting with them at least once a week to be able to honestly share what's going well and what's not. It's really hard doing all of this learning, and you need someone to advocate for you, listen to you, and help problem solve with you as the junior engineer. So first week is there. So we've got the learning plan, the engineering leveling doc, you've got your junior engineer integrated into your team, and now we're moving to the first 3 months or the first 90 days. What should be true for that? You should announce this while you make the job offer, but I recommend that you do a trial period with your junior engineer. At Reactive Ops, we do this with all of our engineers. 90-day trial period. And the reason that I like this, again, I was talking with Kendall before I started the company, basically said, hey, since you don't know whether or not you like being an ops person, let's try it for 3 months, and if you don't like it, you can totally walk away. It's also good the company has a set time if it's not working out or that person isn't right for the role. Both parties know that we're going to reevaluate and decide on this in the first 3 months. You want to review the new engineer's progress as compared against your leveling doc. Within the first 3 months, they'll probably have gotten through a lot, if not all, of their learning plan. And so look at that engineering leveling doc, decide what can the person do well, what do they need to work on, write those goals, and have them start working on their goals during their learning time. You also want to start flipping the ratio of work from learning plan to real authentic work so that they're working more as part of your team instead of focusing just on the learning plan. And then once the person has completed their learning plan, you want to encourage formal learning through exam prep, a book club, or an online course. So now is the time, 3 months in, where the person has done a lot of work and working with those high-level concepts is going to be more appropriate. So what I've done in the last year is one exam that I've studied and taken is the AWS Cloud Practitioner exam. This is a multiple choice exam where you have to answer questions about what services are offered in AWS. It was a good exam for me to take. It wasn't too difficult, but now I can really navigate through the AWS console with some confidence, which is really important in my day-to-day work. Second exam that I have taken but failed, but I'm going to take again, is the Certified Kubernetes Application Developer exam. I really like this exam because you actually get dropped into a Kubernetes cluster and you are asked to build a lot of things in a certain amount of time. And this exam has been really good for me because it's asking me to do things in Kubernetes that I don't do during my day-to-day. So I'm really starting to understand what is the platform good for, what are some of its shortfalls, and it's just expanding my knowledge of the main tool that we use at my job. So encourage formal learning through exams, book clubs, taking other courses, and plug that into the engineer's 20% time. Another thing you want to do is hire more juniors. When you are the only junior in an ocean of seniors, you have a lot of feelings, and you really doubt your confidence. You really experience imposter syndrome. So bring on more juniors. As we've been bringing on more juniors at Reactive Ops, it's been really good for me to work with those people because I can see, oh wow, I've actually made a lot of progress in the last 10 months, even though it doesn't always feel like that. So that's the first 3 months, and now we're on to the first year. You just have a couple of things to do here. Once again, review the new engineer's progress as compared against your leveling doc, and promote that person when they've leveled up. Hopefully within a year's time, they're a mid-level engineer at your company. Also, pat yourself on the back, because if you've done this, if you've taken a junior engineer and made them a mid-level engineer within a year, you've done something that's really uncommon in the tech industry, and you've really done something special. So, your company can transform a junior engineer to a mid-level engineer within 1 year. You have a lot of work to do to set up your company culture before you start inviting juniors into the company. But if you do that work, it's going to improve the lives of your engineering teams. You're going to be able to welcome in new people. You also want to do a lot of work to prepare for the junior engineers day one by creating a leveling doc, a technical learning plan, and getting them ready to be part of a team. Finally, provide them with personalized resources and ongoing support throughout their first year so that they can level up. These are the credits. I want to thank specifically Women of Color in Tech Chat for the pictures. And if you're interested, we are hiring at Reactive Ops for our junior, mid, and senior level engineers. If you're curious, take a look there or come see me after. Again, my name is Kim Schlesinger. You can find me at Kim Schless on all the things. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's do just a few questions while we're swapping out speakers. Who's got a question for Kim? Hands up. Anybody?
First of all, thank you very much. It was a wonderful, wonderful talk. How do you balance learning plans between what prepares you for the job you're doing right now versus the position that you might want to be in the future?
So the question is, how do you balance the design of the learning plan with what job the junior is going to be doing now versus what they do in the future? I would say just focus on what they're doing now. Ideally, it is related to what your mid and seniors do, but get them those concrete skills, because once they get some fluency with the learning plan, they'll be able to set those goals and identify what other engineers are doing. And so I would say they'll be able to do it after that first one.
So how do you sell this to management? How do you justify the ROI on the 20% investment that you laid out up front?
The question is, how do you sell the return on investment of the 20% time? I don't know. I do know that at ReactiveOps, since we've switched to having 20% time, our engineering team is a lot happier, more productive, and we're just more on the cutting edge with technologies that we can use. And so we're just a happier, more productive engineering org. I'd be curious if there's some numbers about that, but yeah, that's a tricky one.
You can ask Kendall when you're done.
All right. Please, one more time, put your hands together for Kim. Thank you, Kim. That was awesome.